Just kind of circling back to the Cam Schlittler conversation, how do we evaluate just huge pop-up players? Is there anything we can look at to maybe signal that before it happens?
We need to adjust our forecast for him right away. What we're looking for is
We've got one email from Jim who says, revisiting the topic of how prospects break into their team's top 30, then the top 100, then have huge impacts on the big league game. The best example for him is Cam Schlittler now. Drafted in 2022, didn't make a BA list until 2025. Although I will say, I want to count our draft list because Cam Schlittler was on the draft list. So we at least covered him in the draft. But your point, like he didn't make the team top 30 until 2025.
nobody's patting ourselves on the back over ranking him in the 400s on our
Hey,
draft list, I don't think.
we had some information on him, and I feel like it does tie together kind of the story. Like we can see what he was like in college and what scouts thought of him at the time. Not saying like I want to take credit for him. We just covered 500 prospects, and he was one of the guys that was on the list. But anyways, Jim goes on to say, another prospect list I follow had him at 600 overall after the 2024 season, popping to 220 early this year. A comment and a question. Guys who have big MLB success without being top prospects when they're signing are out there. The question is, how do we, dynasty baseball players, find them? Real big league clubs need to know this too because they're extremely valuable in trades. He mentions Christopher Sanchez. And then asks, will MILB StatCast data help with this? Are there any minor league stats to look for to indicate future MLB success or future jumps? So paraphrasing a little bit there, but just kind of circling back to the Cam Schlittler conversation, how do we evaluate just huge pop-up players? Is there anything we can look at to maybe signal that before it happens or before it happens entirely? What are your thoughts on all that, Ben?
I love the questions. I think he's asking too, how do we identify it like while it's happening before other people pick up on it? So I think what we're looking for to find players like that who are in the midst of a true breakout, not necessarily making a prediction of saying, oh, I think this guy is going to be a breakout guy in the future, but that it's happening right now and we need to adjust our forecast for him right away. What we're looking for is some meaningful signal of a change in a player's true talent level, which, okay, well, what does that mean? It's, is it about like a month of performance for a player where, a pitcher has a great ERA or a great strikeout rate, walk rate, a hitter with a great slash line? No, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, the performance might follow as
Yeah, I
a,
think those could be lagging indicators rather than leading.
yeah, it could be a byproduct of a change in the player's true talent level, and we do use statistics like that to estimate the player's true talent level, but it's not necessarily what we're looking for to detect those changes. I think what we're looking at is more, indicators that something significant has changed with a player, and ideally in a way that can be detected quickly. But sometimes it does take longer to play out and feel a bit more confident that it is a meaningful change. But for a pitcher, and I would say it's easier to detect these changes faster for pitchers than it is for hitters, just because pitchers control what you see coming out of their hands. One of them is a change in velocity, or you could see a change in pitch movement, a measurable change in the break of a pitcher's slider, or he adds a new pitch altogether, right? He starts throwing a splitter, or he switched to a new grip on his changeup, especially for a high school pitcher, somebody who hasn't really thrown that pitch much yet. And now all of a sudden he's throwing a plus changeup that might have been a 30 pitch or a 40 pitch, or something he just barely used at all before. I think like Jonah Tong would be a good example a couple of years ago with the Mets, where he was, the first month into that 2024 season, after he had like whatever it was, like a 6 or a 7 ERA in rookie ball the year before, he comes out and it's like, whoa, all immediately you can see this guy's stuff is way different. It's way up. He's breaking out, and now he's one of the best pitching prospects in baseball. So those measurable changes in a pitcher's stuff, if you have an understanding of how to evaluate pitches visually, or looking at, the TrackMan or the Hawkeye data that those pitches produce, you can more quickly adapt and update your prior beliefs or projections and change those projections for a player. I think like command, control, that's a little bit trickier because there are outings or a stretch of outings with a player where somebody who may previously struggled with command or throwing strikes is now not throwing or not walking as many guys, which can be a positive signal, but it might just be a good stretch for him that reverts. But for the stuff uh, coming out of the hands, just talking about pitchers, that's at least one way you can identify that a player has in fact changed that true talent level.
Yeah, I think it's also just worth reinforcing how fast pitchers can really change their profiles today. Like pitchers in particular, it feels like with where we're at in pitching development, both in terms of training velocity, just adding new pitch types. Like we see this pretty regularly now, like a player experiments with a new grip or adds a new pitch, and just a weakness they previously had can, I mean, it's not entirely overnight, but it almost feels like it can just be like a bit of a switch that's flipped immediately. So I think everything you said is absolutely spot on. And I don't think it's a case where you want to just look at like the results of the statistics. I do think if you're a dynasty player and you're trying to find the value, like using all of the public like pitch data or under the hood measures that we have on players that are becoming increasingly more available to the public at the minor league side is your best bet. Like if you have a pretty good literacy with all of this stuff, you've been reading like all the BA reports and you kind of understand what you're looking for. I think we even have like just Stuff Plus um, out there for pitchers more publicly, like at the minor league level. I know those statistics normalize fairly quickly. So even if you like don't feel like you can be super confident in looking at like specific pitch shape data or velocity, like those numbers are what teams are using to like drive their models, and teams value those. And I think one of the biggest benefits is like those like changes in those specific numbers are reliable fairly quickly. So for hitters, is there anything you want to point out for them specifically, Ben, or do you think this is more specifically towards pitchers?
Yeah, it's with both, but with hitters, I think it takes more time. Ultimately the goal is the same though, right? Has this player's true talent level changed? With pitchers, you have more of what I would call input data. So the pitcher throwing a 98-mile-an-hour fastball with 20 inches of IVB, 6 inches of horizontal from a 5'8" release height. Okay, that's the output, or excuse me, that's the input. Um, the pitcher controls that directly. With hitters, you don't have as much of that. You can get it with other tools, right? Like a player's speed, his raw arm strength. Usually more. You
Really
can get that.
changing the profile, the future projection when the arm strength grade changes dramatically for a hitter,
Right,
right?
but you can change that. You can see if a player's
Right.
tool
Yeah, I see what you
has
mean.
changed. It's obviously not that important and relative to the other ones, and
Uh-huh.
especially if you're not in a showcase setting, like it's harder to detect that in a game
Right.
setting. Uh, but then you also, just like with hitting, it's just harder to get that same level of input data that you have with pitchers. You have their output, which could be their slash line, it could be their strikeout rate, their walk rate, swinging strike rate, in
Mhm.
zone swinging strike rate, chase rate, and those all are important data points to have. But it's not in the hitter's direct control the way that slider movement is for a pitcher, and it also just takes more time for us to reliably estimate the player's skill level in those areas. Uh, but there are inputs for a hitter that you you can see, but not necessarily quantify, or at least have the access to quantify it for minor league players. So bat speed would be one, right? If we knew, hey, this hitter added X miles an hour of top end bat speed relative to last year, that's meaningful. That's going to affect his power upside or his power output, and it's going to just affect his overall hitting. Or this hitter has changed his hitting mechanics where his swing is now more compact. His barrel is taking a tighter turn into the zone. It's getting into the zone quicker, earlier. The path is keeping the head of the barrel through the zone for a longer period of time. That should, or at least could, I guess I should say, mean that a hitter has made a meaningful adjustment that will transfer or will translate to better results in game. Exit velocity is one where I would bucket that into output data, but still, if we're seeing peak exit velocities beyond what a hitter has previously shown, that's a signal that power has changed. So, we've say you have a hitter we've never seen anything above 108 before, and now he's hitting balls 111, 112. One, obviously, want to make sure it's just not like a one-off misread. But if you are seeing higher EVs, you can feel confident that that's a change in true talent level for a hitter's power. There's like a meaningful, quantifiable change that's already occurred. And look, like with hitting too, there's a lot more to hitting than just hitting the ball harder or having more bat speed or even just having a great swing. There's a lot of guys who have really good swings who are not good hitters, but you have to recognize pitches, pick up spin, swing at strikes, be on time, have the hand-eye coordination to make contact. So I might be more judicious on like rocketing up the hitter through up our list when we do have significant history on him and just waiting to see some more performance data play out. But when that performance matches the changes that we're seeing mechanically or in other measurable data that holds meaningful signal, then yeah, that's probably a sign of a hitter who is in a true breakout.
Nice, very well said. And I think just in general, really fun question from Jim. So if you guys have questions similar to this or questions about process, I know we really like to talk about that on the show. It's always a lot of fun. So send them our way. It's at futureprojection@baseballamerica.com is the email. Questions, comments, feedback, anything you want to send that way, we'll be able to see it. I think that's all we have for today, Ben, but in terms of questions, but if you wanted to add anything before we get out of here, I don't know if you're about to say something.
No, well, just the last part that it also helps to have a staff full of people at Baseball America who are also all trying to find these guys who are breaking out rather than just trying to find them all myself or the two of us.
Yeah, if you're in a dynasty league, maybe like force your kids to be like bird dog evaluators for you, scouring the internet, trying to find as much data as you can to tip you off to some changes. Get more eyeballs there. or maybe just subscribe to BA. Maybe that'll tip you off before your league mates as well.
Well, they don't have to be mutually exclusive, Carlos.
That's true.